So welcome everybody. I hope you're all doing well. As I was planning this, over the weekend, I was saying, whoa, I know what I'm going to be talking about, because I'm sure if any of you were following the news last week, the main issue, of course, was what was going on with Gaza. And it was basically 5 or 5.5 days, 6 days, depending on how you count it, of ongoing attacks. And basically what happened is that once again, Gaza attacked Israel. And well, it started as follows. Let's backtrack a little bit. Okay. There's a Palestinian fella who's in prison in Israel, and he decided to go on a hunger strike. He's going on a hunger strike because, I don't know, he wants to be released. I don't know what. Now, you need to understand, Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons have deluxe accommodations. Now, they are clearly in prison. Their freedom is curtailed. But I was reading, for example, there was a little bit of biography about some of these fellows that were killed by Israel, and I'll get to that in a minute. And with a couple of them, it said, completed his bachelor's degree while in an Israeli prison. Okay. Have you ever heard of this? They're in a prison, and we give them a free university education. Does this make sense?
Yes.
It doesn't make sense to me. Okay, so whatever his problem was, this fellow, and he was on a hunger strike, he probably just wanted to be released. And Israel is not going to be extorted. The guy is on a hunger strike, so we can say, okay, we think you should eat. Do you want to eat? Do you don't want to eat? Okay, so he died. He died because he didn't eat for weeks, okay? And, well, of course, this created all kinds of anger in Gaza, but as I'm sure you can appreciate, it doesn't take a whole lot to create anger in Gaza. And so, as a result, the Gazans started sending missiles over to Israel. Now, it seems, or this is at least how it was identified, it seems that the people responsible for these rockets were identified by Israel as coming from a small, even more radical than Hamas organization called Islamic Jihad, which is actually an international group, but it's the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Okay, so that's who did it. And they started sending rockets, and Israel responded. And one of the first things it did, now of course you need to understand what happens in the IDF. The IDF doesn't sit around between round of attacks from Gaza and twiddle their fingers. Okay, the entire time they are figuring out what's going on in Gaza. So you have intelligence assets, for example, that are in Gaza. These are generally Palestinians themselves, who, whether it's for idealistic reasons or for financial reasons, and usually some combination, are providing intelligence to Israel. There's also a huge system, infrastructure of electronic intelligence gathering. Israel is probably a world leader. I have been told by people that they will know what a couple is saying to each other in their bedrooms. They're listening to everything, okay? So as a result of this kind of intelligence gathering, which goes on all the time, they don't sit and wait till, somebody rockets. They're following this stuff. And one of the things they're, of course, following are the terrorist leaders. Where are they? So that if at any moment the government gives the order, yes, we want to take out these leaders, and that's always considered a special decision. It has been some time since Israel used this as a vehicle to take out, to kill the leaders, but they did it, and in one day they killed 5. The 5 biggest leaders of the Islamic Jihad were just taken out. I think they were even all together. Maybe they're at a meeting, whatever it was, boom. And the thing that's so amazing about this is the pinpoint accuracy the IDF has. not only do they know where they are, but they have the capability of sending a missile that will just kill those 5 people. We saw actually in the last Gaza engagement, which I thought was just amazing, there was a building, an apartment building, several stories high. There was an apartment in that building where a bunch of terrorists were gathering. And the IDF was able to pinpoint the attack so that it struck only that one apartment in the building, and nobody else was hurt. It's absolutely insane. We also saw now on the television, we saw footage from Gaza itself. And you saw people from Gaza outside, and they're sitting there saying, this one guy is saying in Arabic, of course, but we get the translation. He's saying, here I am sitting in my house, and I get a call from Israel telling me you have 1 minute to leave the house. So he's complaining, right? He's saying, so I grabbed my kids and I grabbed my family and we ran outside. We didn't have a chance to take anything with us. And here we are. And sure enough, his apartment is bombed. Why was his apartment bombed? Because, in the same apartment building or in the same apartment or whatever are terrorists. So when it is impossible to do a pinpoint execution like that, where you're going to take out terrorists in a particular apartment and not harm anybody else, that's fine, no warning. But Israel has been I don't think there's another country in the world that does this. When they know they're going to attack a particular building and innocents will be hurt, so they will very often then warn them. It's like crazy. They will call them on the telephone, which means also what intelligence you have. They're calling them on their cell phones. They're not calling them on their landlines. They have the cell phone numbers of every person in a given building. I mean, I also would tell you that what we do know they can do is they can track all the cell phones. They know, in other words, if they know a particular cell phone belongs to a particular person, they will know where that cell phone is, which is one of the things that helps them figure out where that person is, assuming that he has a cell phone. Now, another thing that the IDF does, which is crazy incredible, is you see this also when the Air Force is given the instruction, this is the coordinates, these are the people that you need to attack. And they go above that and they see down and they can see with their sophisticated equipment. If they see a kid riding a bike nearby, a mom pushing a pram nearby, they call off the attack. Again, in America, I don't know how it is in Australia and other countries, but I remember well when America first went into Afghanistan and before that into Iraq, when they would publicize numbers of people killed and whatever, they would also, there was a different category. It was called collateral damage. And I remember, what the heck is collateral damage? Well, collateral damage is people. Collateral damage was all the innocent civilians that they killed because they were nearby a target. So Israel tries very hard not to cause any collateral damage, which is crazy. I mean, I think it's very admirable. It really is. But it's so ironic because it is the army, the one army in the world who is doing this, who has invested millions, maybe even billions, to develop technology to be able to pinpoint your targets as opposed to your civilians, and keep your civilians out of it as much as possible. This is the same country and the same army that is accused on a daily basis of war crimes. It's mind-boggling. It's so crazy. Anyway, that's just an aside. So, but that's how the campaign began. And then we got rid of these guys, and then everybody was, of course, upset. And so we had a series of, went on for 5 more days, where they were sending rockets over to Israel. Now, their easiest targets are always the areas closest to the Gaza Strip. There's a number of smaller communities and kibbutz settlements, etc., along that area, Nahal Oz, Sad, Alumim, I don't know the names of all of them, a number of these places. Then you have Sderot, which is a town, even a city, that is also very, very close. Just beyond that range, you have Ashkelon, which is a very large city, just north of the Gaza Strip. It's a lovely place, by the way, highly recommended. If you're looking just for a place to relax in Israel that's not too far, lovely beach. Anyway, that's my little advertisement for Ashkelon. But also wonderful Roman ruins there. There's a whole archaeological park. It's really interesting. Anyway, so that was also targeted. People in these areas that were closest to the Gaza Strip literally were in their shelters for 5 days. They didn't come out except for brief moments to run to stock up on groceries or whatever. They literally were in their shelters the whole time. People that were a little further, why were those people in the shelters? Because they have like a 15-second warning. So it's not enough time to get into a shelter. Whereas people who have a minute warning or a 40-second warning or something like that, these are people that would very often not necessarily be in the shelter, but they would be nearby the shelter so that within a minute they could run in also. So, but that meant that the schools were closed in this whole area and businesses were closed and roads were blocked. I mean, the IDF didn't want people driving around in that area at any point. They could be targeted. Thank God, because of this extreme care that people took, because of the Iron Dome, which is an amazing technology that intercepts missiles. They intercept actually short-range missiles, and for the first time, a new technology was launched. I don't remember what it's called, but it is able to intercept mid-range shootings. So we are covering a lot more of a range than we used to. They shut down nearly all the missiles that would have landed in populated areas. They don't bother shooting down missiles that they know are going to land in an empty field. Many of the missiles, by the way, maybe even a quarter of the missiles that were shot actually landed in the Gaza Strip. They didn't even get over the line. So it's quite probable that there were Arabs themselves that were killed or injured by their own firing. There was one fatality. There was one missile that, for whatever reason, that's something they are now checking, the Iron Dome did not catch, and it landed direct hit on an apartment building in Rehovot, and somebody was killed, which of course is tragic, and nobody, we always want to have everybody safe. But at the end of the day, we're doing our best in an impossible situation. And it's the Arabs that, are constantly trying to kill us. Now, at the end of this, Saturday night, a ceasefire was announced, and it was supposed to go into effect at 10 o'clock in the evening. For a number of hours following that deadline, they still continue to fire. Previously, this is typical. They agreed to a time and then they continue firing afterwards. Previously, what was very often done in that kind of situation was Israel did not respond to those final rockets. The feeling being, I believe mistakenly, okay, they want to give themselves a sense that they fired the last shot, let them fire the last shot. This time, thank God, the attitude was different. Every single shot that is fired is going to be responded to. So even those final shots were responded to by the IDF. So it wasn't until, something like 2 a.m. that everything finally ended. They did wait a bit the next morning before opening schools in the area closest to the Gaza Strip, but by the following day, everything went back to normal. Netanyahu got up and made a very impressive announcement, and he was interviewed several times since then. What was his conclusion? And he announced, and he believed that they struck such a terrible blow, especially, of course, the killing of those leaders, and it ended up being 6 leaders that were killed. That dealt such a blow. Not only did it compromise the ability of Islamic Jihad to continue fighting, and in fact, they were the ones that requested the ceasefire, but that he believes it also acts as a deterrence against Hamas, against Iran, against Hezbollah, against all these other wonderful fellows in the neighborhood who want to do nothing more than destroy Israel. And here, of course, is where the discussion begins. And we don't really have an answer. Was this an effective campaign from Israel's point of view or not? And I would say, most people, the prime minister is there to raise morale and to make people feel good. And definitely people got a very great deal of satisfaction from the success of the campaign, no question. But I don't think anybody in Israel is living under any illusions as to the permanent nature of the campaign. I don't even know if we have any illusions as to the long-term nature of the campaign. There's no question this was just another round, and another round is coming soon. So in terms of deterrence, I have no idea. It seems to me that if we have deterrence, it's maybe for a few months. It's enough for them to lick their wounds, figure out what to do next. For all we know, Iran is in the process now of supplying them with yet another type of equipment or another kind of missile that they think will be more effective. What we do know, and this is something that the IDF has released just today, that Iran, from what they're hearing, they also are listening in Iran. IDF is listening into everybody. No, they're not listening to you over there in Europe and Australia, but they are listening to Iran. And what they're hearing is that the Iranians are very disappointed with the Islamic Jihad. Now, the Islamic Jihad is their client, okay? They're actually their proxy. And so it is not just that the Islamic Jihad receives money from Iran for attack against Israel, which they want to do, but it's also that the Iranians are pushing Islamic Jihad to wage this campaign as their proxies. So they're disappointed. They're saying that, and they're right, that the Islamic Jihad didn't accomplish anything. Now, very interesting part of all of this is the role of the Hamas. It is the Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, much bigger, much wealthier, much more powerful, and much more in control of Gaza. Hamas actually runs Gaza. And it's interesting because they have always only ever been a terrorist organization. It's kind of weird. How does a terrorist organization run a place? I don't know if I'd call Gaza a country. It's a region. It's an area with a lot of people living. And when you run a place like that, you have to not just worry about waging your wars, but you have to look after housing and schooling and hospitals and garbage collection and all this stuff. And all of this stuff has always run very poorly because the Hamas has clearly what means much more to them than anything else is killing Israel. They don't care what happens to their people. They don't care if they have soaring unemployment rates. Well, some months ago, they indicated that, I don't know how, and there's different intermediaries that are involved in this, that they would like for Israel to give work permits to some people to come in to work from Gaza. Now, this has been a debate, okay, because do we give work permits to these people coming in from Gaza? What will it accomplish? So on the one hand, first of all, Israel has total control of who comes in. And nobody is allowed in that has any kind of connection to terrorism. And that everybody knows, and the Hamas knows it. So it's not like the Hamas is able to arrange for Israel to hire their relatives, because the last people that are going to get permits to work in Israel is anyone who has any connection with Hamas or Islamic Jihad or any of these people. However, when these people come into Israel and they make a good living, which they do, they come back to Gaza, they have money. And with that money, they can support their family, they can ingest it into the economy, they buy things. And so the Hamas suddenly has started to realize, which is a relatively new thing, that they need to be worried not just about fighting Israel, but maybe they also need to be thinking at least a little bit about the local economy in Gaza, reducing unemployment, boosting the local economy, etc. So that has been going on, and more people have been allowed into Israel to work from Gaza. But of course, every time there's a campaign like that, that's cut out. That's it, finished. There is a sense that that Hamas were influential in pressuring Islamic Jihad to stop the attacks, because they knew that this was going to affect the economy, as Israel would not allow, these Gaza people to come into work. So this is part of the debate. Where is Hamas in all of this? It was seen that Hamas did not participate at all in the attacks. But Hamas is the organization that controls Gaza. So clearly, if Hamas wanted to stop the attacks, they could. They chose not to. So Israel at the same time had to choose whether they are going to see Hamas is overall responsible for what's going on and therefore also attack Hamas targets, or are they going to focus on Islamic Jihad? Israel decided to focus only on Islamic Jihad targets and did not touch Hamas targets. Now, the rationale behind this is that if we can separate them, if indeed Hamas is getting more interested in basic municipal issues, maybe there's an avenue of discussion there where it's kind of like a carrot and a stick. Hamas realized if we keep them out of the equation, we can continue cooperating them on economic issues when this is all over. And the very last thing before the ceasefire went into play is that Israel released a statement. It was kind of like an unofficial statement, but it was a statement nonetheless coming from the security establishment that basically said, Hamas, if you don't rein them in, we're going to go after you. Was it wise to wait a week before putting forward that threat? Was it wise to isolate Islamic Jihad from Hamas? I have no idea. The debate is out on that. What I can say clearly is that no one has any illusions that this was the end of the story. As one person I heard say on television, one of these former generals or whatever, he says, look, he says, when you're the person on the other side, or the organization or the people on the other side, is a terrorist organization committed to your destruction, you have nobody to talk to. Everybody says, oh, we all have an interest that the people of Gaza, the ordinary people, whoever they are, the ordinary people should just be able to have better lives. Now, all of us agree that ordinary people in Gaza should have better lives. The question is, who are those people? Do they really exist? I'm sure there are some. I'm sure there's some Gazans who can't stand the Hamas, who can't stand the Islamic Jihad, and just think we need to live in peace. But on the other hand, we do know that the overwhelming majority of people in Gaza support Hamas. So, how do you deal with this? At the end of the day, the way I see it, this is going to keep going because there's only so much Israel can do. Israel is not going to go into Gaza. It would be at tremendous expense to the lives of our soldiers, and the result would not be worth it because we are not going to be able to take over Gaza, get rid of the Hamas, and then control it. It cannot work because there's too many other parties playing in the area that would interfere with that. Okay, it's too late. What we may have been able to do in 2005, before we left, we've been gone a long time, during which time Hamas has tremendously strengthened its presence in Gaza. It is possible if the international community would stop thinking so much about, how do we help the poor people of Gaza, and thinking more about punishing the Gazan leadership, holding out more of a stick than a carrot, and getting involved in some more international way, financially, all kinds of other things, and even militarily. It's possible the international community, if it would pull in the Gulf states, Egypt, some of these other players. Is this possible? I don't think it is, because the international community has been dealing with similar situations in Syria now for many, many years and is powerless to do anything. The Americans and some of their allies have been in Afghanistan and have recently pulled out. Why? Because they were powerless to do anything. Had they had more, determination, maybe they could accomplish more. I have no idea. On the other hand, you're thinking about people from countries all over the world sending their soldiers who are risking their lives for an area of the country that is here, that is not there. Do they want to do this? I have no idea. So the way I look at it, we're at a kind of ongoing situation where Israel is going to constantly do its best to get rid of some of these attacks, knowing that just even if we had a more serious kind of attack, and I do think that is possible, we could have done more, we could have destroyed more. Again, maybe the deterrence would last 2 years instead of a few months. That's the difference. We are not solving a problem. And I think that statement was really correct. So long as someone is their goal is to destroy you, you're not going to be able to change the relationship into one of peaceful coexistence. And peaceful coexistence can include we hate each other's guts. However, let's do business and not kill each other. That's good. We don't have to be friends, okay? But they cannot accept our existence here. They cannot. It's part of their ideology. They are radical Islamists, and that is part of their ideology, and they have put that before their own welfare and the welfare of their people. So as long as we have that situation and we don't have people who start back and thinking, you know, let's have a better life, it's not going to work. On the other hand, when I look at places like Saudi Arabia, and particularly the Gulf states that have made peace with Israel, real peace with Israel, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain in particular, we are seeing a maturity that has come over those countries as they have developed themselves economically. It doesn't have anything to do with Israel at the beginning. They decided at some point, instead of being, a bunch of desert chieftains that continue to think with the mentality of the desert chieftains of 200 years ago, let's turn into a modern country. Let's attract tourism. Let's attract foreign investment. They have the money to do so much of this because of the oil, but that's not going to last forever. And they have made conscious decisions to turn toward the West for the benefit of the people who live in those countries. And that is what has enabled them to have peace with Israel. Now, there's all kinds of incentives. They were afraid of Iran, and they wanted to join up with the United States and Israel, and all these things play a part. But the most fundamental change that when those countries went through was to say, it doesn't serve us to maintain our hatred of Israel. It serves us better to do business with Israel, okay? So what that has happened is they have abandoned that extremist, they're still good Muslims, right? But they've abandoned that extremist view that says, we don't have to live, we just have to kill. Who knows? Maybe one day the people of Gaza will change. It's possible. If you ask me, it's a change that God is going to have to orchestrate. You know, I think he orchestrated the change in the development that we've seen in the Gulf states. And we're not all the way there. You know, there's all kinds of issues going on there too. There was a recent agreement brokered between Saudi Arabia and Iran with Chinese involvement. All those players, we sit back and we go, you know, what does this mean about Israel? And we don't know. We don't know yet. But again, changes do happen, and we can continue to hope and pray that change will happen also in this part of between us and Gaza. But as I would say, don't hold your breath. You know, I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Okay, so that's more or less a recap of what was going on politically, security, etc. I want to share with you a piece of very good news. I don't know if you're aware, but one of the projects that we have been extremely involved with was absorbing new immigrants to not just to Israel, but to Judea and Samaria. That's our thing, is Judea and Samaria, of course. So, you know, while the whole country is involved in absorbing immigrants, those who want to come to Israel and helping them get settled, our focus is to encourage them to come to Judea and Samaria and help them settle there. And when the war broke out in Ukraine just over a year ago, we saw this as, well, actually the whole country saw this as an amazing opportunity, hoping that as a result of this unrest, Jews who were just sitting around in Ukraine and having a good life, the fact that they were suddenly in a war zone may bring them to a point where they're going to reevaluate. Do they want to stay in Ukraine? Do they want to stay in Europe? And maybe the time has come to move to Israel. Now, as you know, the war in Ukraine produced enormous refugees. Unfortunately, far lower numbers of people coming to Israel than we would have liked. Many, I would say, many came, or not many, but there was a decent number that came the first few months of the war. By, I don't know, that summer, last summer, beginning of the fall, 40% had already gone back to the Ukraine. These are people who are eligible to make Aliyah. Most of them are not Jewish, but they have a Jewish grandparent. And that is significant because they were clearly coming to Israel not because they wanted to be part of the Jewish people and settle in Israel. They came because maybe they had a friend or a relative, and it was a place to go until, things became more settled. And a lot of people have gone back to the Ukraine. They're not necessarily sitting in Kiev, or they're not necessarily sitting in the eastern parts of Ukraine, but they're definitely going back to Western Ukraine. And there are other people who've gone back to other European cities, where there are European countries who've been very welcoming of these refugees. And again, these are not people who want to throw in their lot with the people and land of Israel. And it's very unfortunate, because I would want to see, and again, if you're looking for something to pray, I really believe that one of the things that we can pray about is for God to help change people's understandings, desires, minds, motivations, okay? Which is what really we were talking about when we talk about Gaza, that kind of transformation that the people and the leadership, particularly of Gaza, have to go through. I'm not sure if that can help it by itself. That might be something that God has to intervene on. Here too, okay? I would have thought that circumstances would kindle in the hearts and minds of Jews to come to Israel, and it didn't happen. Well, it's happening. It's just happening in much smaller numbers. Anyway, so basically, immediately, though, after the war began, we began an initiative to build a new neighborhood in Rivava, which is a lovely, lovely religious community in Samaria, for Ukrainian refugee immigrants from that area. And it was done in September. And since then, we have been working to fill those homes, and it has been much slower going than we initially anticipated, mostly because there were fewer immigrants who came. And of the immigrants who did come, there were two issues. First of all, many of them come from big cities. And so the idea of going to this little community in the middle of nowhere in Samaria is a little daunting. They want to go into these big, tall apartment buildings because that's what they're used to. They're used to a big city, hustle, bustle, etc. So that was a bit daunting for them. And the other issue was that our homes were only ready in September, and we accomplished this in record time, I have to say, completely funded, by the way, by Christians. This was a project 100% funded by Christians in the United States and in Holland. Fabulous, fabulous support that we received on this. But because it was only ready in September, the families with children had to already be settled before that so that they could register the children for school. So now we're in a situation, until now, we had 3 families living in these wonderful families. And I have to tell you, an additional family that came before we had the homes ready and found the last available apartment to rent in Rivava. Everybody who has come is over the moon with what this community is giving to them. They are coming into, they have nothing, okay? They're coming into we provided the home, but we're not providing furniture or clothes or anything like that. These people come with almost nothing. And the community immediately, as soon as a family comes in, immediately mobilizes what does the family need. If they need furniture, if they need appliances, if they need whatever, okay, they help them. So just this week, and this is also sometimes tells you something about how these things work. There's one of the reasons we chose Rivava was because there were already some people living in Rivava who had come to Rivava from Ukraine already many years ago. So we had a foundation. We had people there who spoke Ukrainian and could help the people with the adjustments. And in fact, one of these people is a member of the governing board of Rivava. So he's quite in leadership. Now he's a businessman, and he ended up going to Ukraine 2 years ago before there was a war. And he went there, and he was there for, I don't know if he was visiting family or had business connections or whatever. While he was there, he, met a few people, Jews, and he gave them his card. All of a sudden, last week, one of these families calls him up and says, "We're coming to Israel. Can you help us? When are you coming?" "Tonight." Okay. He got this call Thursday morning, and he was told they're coming at 11 o'clock at night on Thursday night. So he said, "Yep, we have an apartment for you." Great. Between that morning and that night, they already put together beds and the basic things that you would need. They went to the airport to meet them at 11 o'clock at night Thursday. They brought them in, and then the following morning, people came from the community to welcome them. They were singing. It was great. I'll see if I can send you pictures with the follow-up. I don't I have them on my phone, but I'm not enough technologically savvy to figure out how to put that on now, but I'll send you the pictures. Anyway, it was an amazing thing. And we have more families on the way. So it has taken a while, but you see, an investment 2 years ago, a chance meeting between someone in Revava and a Jew who is a religious Jew, is a faithful Jew, is committed to Judaism. This is who we want moving to Israel, not someone who's taking advantage of some financial benefits. I'll be here for a couple of months and leave. We want those kind of people that really want to be in Israel and from whom they understand how important the biblical heartland is. But you know what? It surprises me every time, but I meet people like this all over the world, Jews who are so committed, who read the Bible, who pray every day to God, please God, return us to Zion. And then when they have the ability to return to Zion with no problem, just call up and say, bring me to Zion, they don't do it. But, you know, that's a problem that we've been dealing. And the truth is, I understand people have jobs, they don't know Hebrew. It's, in any case, uprooting their children, uprooting their families, changing their way of life. It's not easy. But, you know, when you see a family that did this, and if it needed this little war to kind of, a big war or whatever, to push them in that direction, so be it. We have to believe and continue to have faith that eventually the Jews of Ukraine, of Eastern Europe, of Russia, of Western Europe, all over the world will indeed come to Israel, whatever it takes. That is where we are. So I wanted to just share that with you, this family that just arrived, and we hope and we pray that there will be many more families like this. And the best thing would be is if we have no more space for them, and we have to put out another fundraising appeal to have another neighborhood, which we will build in Samaria. That would be truly amazing. Before I open this up to Q&A, I just want to say one little thought from the Bible. I like to always do that. So a few weeks ago, we read in the Torah portion, in the end of Leviticus, there is a very interesting instruction, which is very relevant to what we're doing right now. In Leviticus 23, we have all these holidays. All the holidays are mentioned in different, there's a few different places in the Bible where we have the holidays. And this is one of them. And we learn that it begins with the holiday of Passover. And then it tells us the following. It says, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when you enter the land that I'm giving to you and you reap its harvest, you shall bring the first sheaf of your harvest to the priest. You shall elevate the sheaf. And here we're talking, by the way, about the barley harvest, and we're talking about something that is done on Passover. On the day you elevate the sheaf, you shall offer as a burnt offering to the Lord a lamb of the first year without blemish. Continues with the details, and then it says as follows. And from the day on which you bring the sheaf of elevation offering, the day after the Sabbath, it ends up being the second day of Passover, you shall count off 7 weeks. And here we have the commandment to count from the second night of Passover. We count 7 weeks, 49 days. And then on the 50th day, we end up with another holiday. That holiday is called Shavuot. Okay, now right here, it doesn't really, it talks about where that holiday is. It talks about it bringing, it says, you must count until the day after the 7th week, 50 days. Then you should bring an offering of new grain to the Lord, and that becomes the wheat offering, and you're bringing the bread, etc. This is noted in other places as the holiday of Shavuot. Okay, this is the only holiday. Shavuot is the only holiday of the 3 pilgrimage festivals, and also the 2 other festivals, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's the only of these 5 holidays that does not have a date. We have the date for Passover. We're supposed to count from the second day of Passover 7 weeks, and after the full 7 weeks, on the next day, on the 50th day, we have a holiday. Why doesn't it have a date? Okay, so first of all, technically speaking, how dates work, we're talking about a lunar calendar, and a lunar month can be either 29 or 30 days. And in the days of yore, okay, in biblical periods and throughout the Second Temple period, the date, the new month was declared by people actually looking for the new moon and saying, okay, today's the first day of the new month. And that meant that some months were 29 days and some were 30 days. And there was no rhyme or reason. It wasn't like a particular month is always 29 days and another month is always 30 days. And therefore, counting 50 days from the first day of Passover is not necessarily going to get you to the same date. Okay, because there's different months in there. There's the first month, which is Nisan. We don't know how many days that month is. Is it 29 or 30? In the middle, there's Iyar. So there's two different months that each one can either be 29 or 30, which means you have like a 3-day window of when the holiday could end up. Okay, so that tells us then, you're kind of begging the question, because what it tells you is that because you don't know which date is 50 days, you're not going to give a date. But the question really is then, why are we linking this holiday to 50 days from Passover as opposed to just giving a date? And whether it turns out to be 49 days or 50 days or 51 days, what does it matter? But I think here's the point. The point of this holiday, one of the points of the holiday, is to connect it to Passover. And in fact, Jewish interpretation says this Shavuot holiday is kind of like an addendum to Passover. Now, the way it's presented here in Leviticus 23 and in most of the Bible, it's very agricultural. So you can think that the point here, why is it being connected? Because you're connecting the barley harvest with the wheat harvest, and God wants us to be in one connection of Thanksgiving for the harvest. It's not like two separate Thanksgivings. Yes, there's two different milestones, but this period of time is all connected. It's a time of the harvest. Okay, very nice. But in Jewish tradition, Shavuot is actually commemorates the day of the giving of the Torah. Okay, and if you go back to Exodus, you'll see in Exodus that the Torah would have been given either the 5th or the 6th or the 7th day of Sivan. It's not clear, depending on how you count the days when Moses goes up to Sinai, back to Sinai, whatever. Now, at some point later on, our calendar was set after the temple was destroyed, and we no longer had this whole mechanism of somebody seeing the calendar, someone seeing the moon and saying, okay, it's the first day of the month, and they basically set it so that we do know that exactly 50 days after the first day, the second night of Passover, is the 6th day of Sivan, and that's set. So that becomes the day that we celebrate Revelation at Sinai. And that actually has become the more fundamental idea that connects Passover to Shavuot. And I think that here we have the really, truly powerful idea. What happened on Passover? God took us out of Egypt. He took us out of slavery. He freed us. Now, you could say that's the end of the story. God freed us. We're not free. We don't have to be enslaved to Pharaoh. We can do whatever we want. No, God says, nuh-uh, that's only the beginning of the story. You're all part of one continuum that ends with Shavuot, which ends with Revelation at Sinai. Because you can't just be freed from Pharaoh. You have to replace Pharaoh with a completely different master. A different master, not a human master, not a tyrant, not somebody who's going to enslave you. But you cannot what happens if you leave slavery and you have no master? You have no laws, you have no rules, you become a slave to anarchy. You become a slave to yourself. You become a slave to your most base passions. And that is not good for humanity. God is saying something very important. I'm going to free you from slavery. But the end of the process is to enter into a covenant with God, to receive the 10 commandments, which is just the beginning of the relationship between the God of Israel and the nation of Israel, through commandments, through teachings, through the Bible. And so these two holidays, therefore, must be linked together. And one more point, we're counting, and we still count today. Now, we haven't brought barley harvest or wheat harvest in a long time. So what meaning can we possibly have of this counting? Yeah, it's always nice to count to the next holiday. You know, it's kind of like when we were in school, we couldn't wait till school ended. We had this count. Can't wait till school ended. How many days have passed? How many more days do we have at school? But there's an idea here that we are counting the days. We are reliving that period of time that the nation of Israel was in the desert. They had just come out of Egypt. They're counting the days. We also count the days to Revelation at Sinai, because when we come to Shavuot, we relive that experience. And the custom we have on Shavuot is to study the Bible. And in fact, people stay up all night. I used to stay up all night. My husband stayed up all night for many, many years. Just recently stopped. We have a little hard time staying up all night studying, but our children do it. And we stay up till late. We'll go to Bible classes till about 1 a.m. or so. Okay. And then we'll come back. But going in the streets, especially in our community, many communities like ours, you walk in the streets all night long. There are people of all ages walking back and forth from the synagogue to homes, to different places where there's classes going on all night, all over the place. People are sitting and studying on their own or in small groups. The idea is study the Word of God all night long, and in that way relive the amazing experience of revelation. This is when God first gave us the Torah, first gave us the Bible, and we want to try to relive that experience every single year. So now when we count from Passover, we're saying we cannot wait, because we are coming into, again, this amazing experience of reliving that revelation, reliving as if we too stood at Sinai, and for the first time we're able to declare to all the world, yes, God, we will listen to whatever you say, and we will do whatever you ask of us. And we celebrate that holiday next week, so it's very, very current. Next Thursday night, a week from this Thursday night, and Friday is the holiday of Shavuot, and we're getting to the last few days of the count, the last 10 days of the count, and it's very exciting. So that's what I have to say. Joy.
Yes, thank you yet again, Sondra, for just a wonderful, informative commentary on everything. And sadly, our Channel 9 wouldn't do that when they're reporting on your war. But it was so good to hear. I'm sure everyone would agree. And my sincere apologies for being late. Some would have seen I put in the chat, I went for a little nap. I'd been out all day and it became a big nap. And even the alarm didn't wake me. So sorry about that. Will you be eating cheesecake on Shavuot?
Yes. The biggest thing that I have to figure out is which cheesecake recipe to use. Now,
yes,
when I had a lot of people staying with me during Shavuot, when I had younger kids and everything, I would usually make 2 or 3 different cheesecakes, because I had to accommodate all the different people in their cheesecakes. But now, most of my children prefer to stay in their own communities on Shavuot because they want to be in their own Bible study groups and stay home. We have 2 families that live in our community, but like an hour's walk away. They're going to stay in their own synagogue, and then they're going to walk over on Friday afternoon to spend Shabbat with us. So I haven't yet decided if I'm making 1 or 2 cheesecakes. Big decision.
Wonderful to be there, wouldn't it, people?
Yeah.
Look, time's going. So, yes, whoever would like to ask anything, jump in. Or maybe I should get you to put your hand up.
Oh, my.
No, that's okay, Lynn, you go. But others, if you could put your hand up so we can keep some order here.
What's the relevance of the cheesecakes at Shavuot?
Oh, milk of the word.
Oh, right.
Lots of cheesecakes. They're just different recipes. I mean, some have like a crumb crust. Some I have like a baked cake as a crust, and then put the cheese
Lynn
in
was
it.
asking why.
Why the cheesecake? I thought you said which kind. Why cheese?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are celebrating Revelation at Sinai, and if you'll notice in the Bible in Exodus, Moses says to the nation, "Prepare yourselves for the 3 days in anticipation." There's a tradition that says that part of that preparation was to knowing that they were going to now be getting all kinds of commandments, okay, to stop doing things that would eventually run afoul of the commandments. So, for example, one of the commandments that it's not in the 10 commandments, but it's part of the commandments that Moses gives afterwards, is about the animals you can eat, the animals you can't eat, and therefore there's this idea that because they didn't yet know what animals to eat, they had cheese. They had dairy products. I have no idea if that's true or not. It's a lovely, lovely story. But what I can say is that it's become a tradition in Judaism that on the holiday of Shavuot, you eat dairy products. And as all good Jewish mothers know, all you do is need to give us is a certain type of, raw material. Tell us what we should make something out of. We'll figure out how to make it. So we make cheese blintzes, which is like a crepe filled with cheese. And we make cheese kugels, which is like a noodle pudding full of cheese. And we make every kind of quiche you can imagine, because of course that is full of cheese. And we make cheesecake for dessert. And ice cream, of course, is also a good dessert. And people like me and my family, we are huge fans of dairy in any case. So having a holiday where the custom is to have dairy, we just make so much stuff, and it's all dairy. And dairy stuff is very rich, especially if it has high-fat cheese and butter. And I'm hoping I'm getting your mouth watering, because that's what we do.
Yes. Diane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sondra. My mouth is watering. We're having a little celebration here in Newcastle on Saturday next week for Shavuot. And I was wondering, can we just have a platter of cheeses and crackers?
You can have anything you want.
Simple.
It's all custom. It's all custom.
I mean, well, that's all of the cheeses, and you just put it out and people help themselves. It's simple, and it doesn't means that people don't have to cook. But we'll have a cheesecake, and I don't know about the blintzes and the kugels, but
you know what? Go get ice cream.
Okay, that's a good.
Who doesn't like ice cream?
True, I hadn't thought of that. That's a good one to add. Okay, Dad, thank you very much.
Anytime.
Pamela. Oh, you're muted, Pamela.
She's not.
She's not muted.
No.
You don't mean me?
No, Pam. There's a Pamela Hecht on.
She's not
Can't
muted.
hear you, Pamela. Oh, sorry. Interesting.
One thing I did want to just make a mention, when Diane spoke, it reminded me, a dear friend of all of us, or many of us, passed away this week. And I know, Diane, I want to thank you for keeping me informed. Judy Russell, for those who knew her from New South Wales. And she was just a dear, dear friend of mine personally, and of CFOIC, hosting me for years at meetings at Parliament House in Sydney. And I feel blessed that I was able to see her in September when I was there. She was not yet ill, at least nobody knew she was ill at that point. And, I am so sorry that she has passed, and just wanted to just say a few words in her memory. And so Diane, thank you personally for all your updates about her.
Yes, she's going to be very much missed, that's for sure, because we have trouble finding contacts now in Sydney to host, a speaker that might be coming out.
Yeah, we definitely need that.
Yeah. Just going back to the last war yet again, Sondra, do you know how many it is yet? But we're just all feeling you must be so weary of war. It just keeps happening, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But, I was in the States. I came back from the States on Friday. And so I was in the States for a good part of this. And so I was meeting with people. Of course, I was updated all the time, but I was meeting with people who were asking me, oh my God, how are people functioning? And well, I explained to you how they function. But I just said, you need to understand, yes, it's very difficult for those people who live close by. It just becomes something, I hate to say this, so you get used to. I was talking to my son on Friday. There was a series of sirens on Friday morning in Efrat and the area of Gush Etzion, which is quite far from Gaza. I talked to my son Friday. I didn't even know that, because I'm not one of these people that follows all the sirens. It can make you crazy. People have these apps on their phone, so the red alerts.
Very
I don't
does.
know. If it's in my neighborhood, I'll hear it, in the siren. I don't want to know. So I'm talking on the phone. He says, yeah, by the way, we're sitting in our shelter. We just had a siren. And it's just, he said it so matter-of-factly, Now, it's not matter of fact when you're living in Sderot and you're living in these places, it's very, very difficult. But even there, the people are so committed. And I don't know if you realize, but in the last 10 years, the population in these areas closest to Gaza has
Yes.
exploded.
Yes, I know. I was
Young
there
families
last
are
year.
moving there.
Yeah.
They're committed.
Shopping malls,
So does
high-rise
it make sense?
apartments.
Yes,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. It makes
Mm.
absolutely no sense. But
Yeah.
you know what? I guess you could say Jews have gone through a lot the last 2,000 years.
Mm.
So chalk this up to just one more series of challenges that we have to deal with. It's not going to defeat us.
Mm. Mm. The fact that you keep going on, though, I think it highlights Hashem's protection of you, doesn't it? I mean,
course.
little Israel, a third of the size of Tasmania, you're surrounded by all these huge Arab nations that have missiles aimed at you at any time of the day. Crazy. It's just crazy, but does highlight how big our God is, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And if you just look, we just celebrated a few weeks ago, we celebrated Israel's 75th anniversary. 75 years in the history of a country is nothing.
Yes.
And if you go back and see the situation in Israel that we had in 1948, we had 600,000 Jews. The people coming in were mostly Holocaust refugees or coming from Arab countries where they're just thrown out with absolutely nothing, didn't have even common languages, no military training, 5 Arab armies surrounding Israel. Every single country was convinced that Israel would not survive. Every single foreign government was preparing for that eventuality, and somehow we survived. Now, if that isn't God's hand, I don't know what is. And that's where it started. And from there on, so today we already have a strong country, and we have a military and all these fancy things. But to really appreciate the miracle, go back 75 years and realize how amazing it has all been.
Yeah.
It is.
I'm Israel Kai.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you, Maureen.
Yes. And look, everybody, don't forget that CFOIC has a tour coming up in November. I don't know if you want to say something to that.
Yes, please. It actually
Sondra?
starts in October. It's October 22nd until November 2nd or something. It's an amazing tour. Joy, you were on the tour last year.
Yes.
And I hope you can join us this year, but whoever can join us, believe me, this is not a tour like any other.
No.
We first of all, it is a comfortable tour, so it's not going to be the kind of place where you go and you're hiking a lot or you're staying in rough accommodations. It is a comfortable tour with a comfortable tour bus and good hotels and good meals, and you're looked after. But at the same time, you have the best quality guide in Israel, and you're spending real quality time in Judea and Samaria, not just seeing sights, meeting people, sitting with people in their living rooms, having lunch with them, figuring, hearing their hearts. There's no other tour that gives you, on the one hand, all the main sites that every Christian needs to see, so that it's also perfectly good tour for a first timer. But it's also a wonderful tour for people who've been to Israel many, many times, because you will see things and gain perspectives that no other tour gives you. So please, I will send you a link when I send my follow-up. I'll send you a link to that. I have sent out some emails about this as well. Please consider joining our tour. I think you'll really love it.
Janine? Any prompts?
No.
Just joking.
Are you talking to me?
Yes. Wondering if you had any.
I do have a question though, but it might take a bit of time. I just wondered about the budget. I mean, first of all, though, I would love to go on the tour, but
Come.
I looked at it and I would love to go, but I have to be back here by the 31st of October. But I have a question.
You could come and leave early, because the best part of the tour is the first week.
I did think about it.
Think about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a question about the budget, Sondra. The 29th, I think, of May. Do you think it will get through?
Yeah, I do. I mean, that doesn't mean we don't know exactly what will be in the budget, but we have 64 seats in the Knesset, so we only need 61 votes to pass a budget. I mean, this happens every time. Every government puts up a budget. There's a lot of bargaining back and forth, not just between coalition and opposition, but within the coalition itself, because there are a number of parties with conflicting interests. And it's a little bit like a Arab bazaar, you know, or market or whatever, you know, it's bargaining back and forth. And yeah, I think it'll pass. Will I like everything in the budget? No, I'm sure I won't, because there are compromises that are being made with coalition partners, and I am not as keen on some of these compromises. On the other hand, that's one of the reasons I will never be a politician, because I know what I think should be done. But to get something done, you always need to have compromises and deals with coalition partners, and that is not my thing. But I trust the government to do what needs to be done to pass a responsible budget.
I could say, well, say.
I'm going to sweep a bit outside.
Oh. Mhm.
Yeah.
Where? There. Are you going to get those leaves off that tree?
Carol, you're
okay.
not muted.
I
Yeah,
Carol,
muted
you're
her.
not, you're good girl.
I muted her.
Sondra, I did wonder, do you think the presence of those Bible-believing Knesset members you've got there now is prompting the government to be a bit stronger on some issues?
Well, it depends what you call Bible believing and what their interests are. See, in Israel, we have a number of different types. So we have, the government has right-wing Zionists who are not necessarily religious people. They're not hostile to religion, but they don't necessarily make decisions based upon the Bible. So you have plenty of people like that in the Likud. You have also the religious Zionist members. Some of them are in the Likud, some of them are in Smotrich's party, some of them are in Ben Gvir's party. Those people, for the most part, have their values in the right place, although they don't necessarily interview well. But you know, those are those. But we also have a whole different group of people, which is very significant in this government, and that's the ultra-Orthodox. And while these are very much Bible-believing people, they take their Bible beliefs to an extreme that I think is not healthy. So, for example, many of them believe that children should only be educated in the Bible, should not learn any subjects that are important just for being a normal citizen and getting a job, like not learn English, not learn math, not learn, you know, all these normal history, geography, whatever. And so they don't have this. And for years, because of their power in the government, they've gotten away with it. And that's one of the problems that today in the budget, that a great deal of money is going to continue to support these schools without including any kind of incentive for them to include these subjects, or to, also another issue is these are people who refuse to go to the army and take their share of the burden. And it's my family, people like me, we're religious Zionists. We are very committed to the Bible and we study the Bible, but we believe you combine your study of the Bible with a regular education, with serving in the army, with serving your country in a host of professions and capacities. And so this is a huge problem, okay, because on the one hand, they are right-wing and they support a lot of the values that we support. On the other hand, they have these demands that are problematic for everybody else in the country, whether right or left. So that's one of the challenges that Netanyahu has to deal with. And the truth of the matter is that it's a challenge that all governments have had to deal with in recent years. I'm not sure how that's going to get fixed. I personally wish that those demands would just not be met. I think that we need to reduce the amount of money going to these schools, not increase them, so that we say, you want more money, you'll get lots more money, but include math and English in your curriculum. You know, very simple. You know, we're not asking them to study Darwin's theory of evolution, not at all. Just math and English, you know. So anyway.
Diane, did you have another question?
Yes, I just wanted to follow on from that, Sondra. There was an article I read yesterday, and Ben Gvir had put up that all the councils, all the rich councils, the regional council should give more money so that the poorer councils can have the basic garbage, rubbish, roads, all that sort of thing in their area. And of course, the ultra area like Meashirim and places like that don't have these basic things because there aren't enough people there paying enough taxes. So they're trying to get the rich people. And the rich people in Tel Aviv are saying, you know, well, if they want to do something better for their councils, they let them get a job. The ultras and Ben Gvir himself said, well, we've just given however many million shekels to Tel Aviv to build, was that a new airport or something, or a new railway in Tel Aviv? He said, we're looking after the rich, but we've got to get the poor people up to standard.
Okay, so this is definitely one of the debates going on now. And on the one hand, it does seem fair that there should be a bit of a reallocation. And I don't think it's about, you know, the people who pay more or less, because it's not about income tax, it's about property tax. So it's really not at all taxes that are linked to how much somebody works. Everybody pays property tax based on the value of their property. So it really is a question of poorer neighborhoods paying less because their property is worth less. So it really isn't about people working. So I think that most people do have sympathy for this idea of reallocating the resources. The problem is that the actual way this is being done is through some complicated formula that has also created some weird results. Basically, what it's doing is it's having the municipalities that have more industrial areas where they get more property taxes, because industrial areas pay more, or commercial areas, but they have more industrial and commercial areas, they have more rent, and therefore that is going to subsidize places that have little industry and more housing. And one of the issues also is to encourage municipalities to build more housing, which by definition produces less property tax than building commercial areas. But what's happened is, for example, because of that formula, you have a neighborhood that's called Savion, which is the wealthiest neighborhood in Israel, and there's no industry there. It's only residential, but it's mansions. Okay, so it makes no sense that because they don't have residential and they just have they don't have commercial and they have residential, that they're going to get a subsidy. That makes absolutely no sense. So they have to adjust it. And I think what's going to happen is that that's exactly what they do now. They're in committee, they're going to adjust it so that the same principle is there, but they'll tweak it so that it does what it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps one last question from Lynn. I'm not sure. Well, Lynn, you go first, and then I do see that hand from Zoom user.
It was just a quick one. When you said about the yeshiva schools, you said English, but did you mean Hebrew?
No, I meant English.
They get taught English in school.
Yeah, everybody is taught English in school. That doesn't mean that they're fluent. As you well know, when you walk the streets of Jerusalem and you try to ask instructions, a lot of people don't know very good English, but they all know some. Okay, you have to be able to have basic English. And today, especially one of the types of jobs that more the ultra-Orthodox who are going out to work and are exploring new avenues, one of them is in computers. You can't begin to learn how to program if you can't read. It doesn't mean you're going to have Oxford English, but you need to be able to read and write English because all computer language is in English. These are people who don't know the ABCs. Okay, so we're talking about basic English. And of course, math, from arithmetic onto advanced math. These are just things, and that's just an example. Science, okay, they need to have basic science. They need to have basic studies. But English and math are the ones that are considered most important for the ability of someone to then go on to higher education and acquire a profession.
Zoom user, the gentleman, his name is Zoom. Do you know him? Yes.
Hi there. I wanted to say thank you to Sondra for what you said about Shavuot. We Christians, of course, have Pentecost, which is the same day, but I'd never seen the importance of the link between Shavuot and the Passover. bless you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we Christians can learn a lot from that.
Definitely.
Good. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
and more. And more.
Yeah.
We better close, hadn't we? We're over time. Yeah, but thank you again, Sondra. I'm sure everyone's appreciated it very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
See
Sondra.
you again soon. Bye.
Thanks for coming.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Shalom,
Bye.
shalom.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed that film. And we have lots more film content and emails and articles that I'm sure you will enjoy as well. Check out our website at cfoic.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You can do that right from the homepage. I know you will really enjoy the content that will land in your inbox on a regular basis. Hope to see you soon.